Hi Year 2, so story time with Miss Drayton again, and today we're doing Dave the Lonely Monster by Anna Kemp and Sarah Ogilvie. So Dave the Lonely Monster. Once upon a time, in a retirement cave, lived a lonely monster. His name was Dave. In his bad old days, he'd been a pest. He'd romped, he'd roared, he'd made a mess. So that was when he was younger. He's now retired, so he doesn't do it anymore. Till folks who like things nice and neat and don't like monsters on their street banished Dave to Echo Rock. Lonesome as a single sock. Poor Dave. And there he stayed for 6 decades. Ooh, can you remember from our history work last term? How long is a decade? It's 10 years. So 6 decades. 6 lots of 10. 6 times 10, 60 years. So and there he stayed for 6 decades. Just Dave and his guitar. Strumming songs no one could hear from dusk till the morning star. And even worse, the local knights would try to get old Dave to fight by laughing at his toothy grin, his wonky ears and scaly skin. But Dave would never harm a flea. He's not the fighting sort, you see. He'd rather play some rock and roll or take a bath to soothe the soul. Then one day, as old Dave dozed, a cabbage bopped him on the nose. Then whack! A beetroot in the eye, and whiz! An aubergine flew by. And what's going on? Then leaping from behind the gorse, a tiny knight on a hobby horse waved a carrot at the sky. Prepare to meet your doom, he cried. So he's waving his carrot like a sword. Prepare to meet your doom, he cried. And look at what Dave's doing in reaction. How old are you? The monster gasped. I'm 6, said Tiny, since you asked. My name is Percival the Brave, and you're the fiendish monster Dave. The monster rubbed his aching head. Do you remember all those vegetables that landed on his head? Well, that's not very nice, he said. Don't you know a proper knight is always kindly and polite? And though I might look fierce to you, we monstrous beasts have feelings too. Percy hadn't thought of that. He stopped and stared, subdued. That means he's a bit thinking quietly. Then blushed down to his boots and said, I'm sorry I was rude. So Percy took a knightly pledge to give up throwing rotten veg. And by the time the week had ended, knight and beast were best befriended. So they are now best friends. They shared a taste in Monster Rock, took a spin around the block, watched the jousting on TV. At last, old Dave had company. So, Dave, our monster, is not alone anymore. But back in town, across the bay, folks got grumpier by the day. Tranquility had reigned for years. So, tranquility is like peace. So, peace had reigned for years. And everyone was bored to tears. They sighed, you know what would be smashing? A good old-fashioned monster bashing. Why don't we make a day of it? Now that should perk us up a bit. And so they grabbed some mushy fruits, some rotten veg, some mouldy roots, and headed out to Echo Rock, where Dave was knitting winter socks. Then just as they were taking aim, so getting ready to throw, a furious knight with eyes aflame came charging through the swelling crowd. "Knock it off!" he cried aloud. "What's this nonsense? Can't you behave? Is that any way to treat old Dave? He may rock out from time to time, but is that such a dreadful crime? Now chuck out those potato peelings and spare a thought for old Dave's feelings." The townsfolk all felt mighty humbled. "We didn't mean it, Dave," they mumbled. Dave smiled and shook his massive head. "If you really want some fun," he said, "then put away the salad bar and let me fetch my bass guitar." And so they went down to the cave and had themselves a monster rave. They've got a party going on now with Dave playing his guitar, rocking out. They danced and sang and danced some more, but bust some moves on Dave's dance floor. Had a riot, learned to jive, and got more monster in their lives. If you could be a rock star like him. So old Dave got his groove back on and was alone no more, thanks to a fiercely gentle knight who knew that he would rather fight for love and peace, not war. Look, Dave's made Percy a jumper, although it looks a little bit big for him, but still. And that is the end. So that was Dave the Lonely Monster by Anna Kemp and Sarah Ogilvie.